we know that Jan and Lee are here. Okay, let's begin. Once again, my name is Richard Duncan from the R.L. Mace Universal Design Institute, welcoming you to this informational webinar about this year's age-friendly accessory dwelling design competition entitled An ADU for You. We have about 90 minutes together today to give you a bit of an outline of the competition and time for questions at the end, so we can dig a little bit deeper, and we'll make some announcements along the way about upcoming events and what the timeline is for the remainder of this summer and this fall, so you can walk away with that. After I get through with some opening remarks now, we're going to have Todd Stubbendiek, who's the state director from AARP Nebraska. They're the funder of this program in collaboration with the planning department from the city of Omaha. They're producing this. They've hired us to help organize things for them. Todd will talk about the kind of background from AARP's perspective and some of the things they're doing specifically in Omaha, in addition to this design competition. After that, we'll have Derek Miller talk. He's the long-range planning manager for the city of Omaha, and he'll talk about this design competition from the city's perspective, some of the rules and regulations that'll be governing things from their end, as well as their new fast track program, which I think you'll find interesting as an enticement to get involved in this. Following Derek, I'll come back and I'll talk about accessory dwellings, where they fit as a housing option for older adults, and what age-friendly design is from our perspective. Following that, Hannah Peele, our design lead at the Institute, will talk about some of the specifics and logistics of the competition itself, and she'll remind you again of some of the timeline things. Following that, we'll have Q&A, and I'm told that you'll be muted for the duration of the presentations, just for logistics purposes, not because we don't want to hear from you. Please, if you have questions, put them in the chat. We'll get to as many of those as we can at the end. And if we get through with those, we can take some live questions also at the very end, if that is your pleasure. The other thing to say is that in addition to this event being recorded, so you'll be able to either see it again, listen to it again later, or for others to it. Hannah will also be talking about some additional incentives that we're offering for participation and the winning entries for the competition this fall, and the fabulous cash prizes, of course, that come along with that. So that's what I have to say at the front end. I'm going to pass this on to Todd now, and you can talk about the competition from AARP's perspective. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you. Hannah, do you have the slides?
There we go.
There we go. Okay. Well, again, my name's Todd Stubbendiek. I'm the state director of AARP Nebraska, and we're happy to be with you today and have you with us. And for you're interested in our accessory dwelling unit design competition, we're pleased to be partnering with a number of organizations here in Omaha. You can see their logos at the bottom. We're very appreciative of their great expertise that they've brought to this competition as well. Next slide. So when people hear AARP's involvement in this competition, I suspect they may say, what's the connection there? AARP traditionally is seen as being interested in things like Social Security and Medicare. What's the housing connection? Housing connection for us is what we know as we talk to people as they age. The number one thing they want is to be able to stay in their homes or in the lowest level of care for as long as possible, to remain in their communities. In order to do that, we know that they have to have age-friendly, age-appropriate housing options out there. And we believe that ADUs are age-friendly, they're family-friendly, and they're affordable. So they provide a solution, a housing solution, not the only one, but they provide a housing solution for folks to be able to age in place. And that can look many different ways. It can be an ADU where they're having a caregiver or a family member live within the ADU while they're in the single family house, or it could also be the situation reversed where they're staying in the ADU on the property of a family member. Talked a little bit about ADUs providing housing options for folks, and we'll get a little bit more into that later on. And so this competition was brought about for really two purposes. One, we really want to create some buildable ADU designs that can be brought to Omaha, so we can jumpstart the process of creating these age-friendly housing options within Omaha. The other part was just to continue to raise awareness of ADUs in Omaha, and I suspect some of you are on here because you do have an interest in design, and some of you are just interested to learn more about ADUs, and we appreciate both groups being on here. Next slide. So this all falls within what we call our livable communities work, AARP livable communities. And again, it's this notion of creating communities that are livable for people of all age, but in particular that are available and helpful for people to age in place. And so that's access to age-friendly housing, that's transportation, that's public spaces. And there's been a couple areas in which AARP continues to work and invest in that effort. One of the things that we offer on a yearly basis is community challenge grants. Community challenge grants are for government entities and nonprofit entities. They are grants that help improve the places that we live. These are urban, suburban, rural, sort of all over the place. And this year, AARP invested $3.6 million for 310 grantees across the state. One of those was for the City of Omaha Planning Department, and that was for them to create a how-to guide and website on ADUs for educational outreach within Omaha. We thought that works well with what the city is doing with their implementing their housing action plan that was created last year. And then we also have this Livable Communities Technical Assistance Program, and that's where this design competition comes from. That's where we have partnered with RL Mace Design Institute, Richard, who you just met, and we'll hear more from later on, to design this ADU for You design competition. Again, to raise awareness of the role that ADUs can play in providing more age-friendly housing options in the city, and also to create some real buildable designs. Next slide. So this competition, you see, this is our timeline for this competition moving forward this fall. This is the first sort of tick on the timeline here. This is our webinar. It will be followed with what we're calling a deep dive age-friendly design webinar that takes place next week. That I encourage folks who are interested in sort of getting more into the weeds of age-friendly designs and ADUs to sign up for. The portal for submission of designs will open up in September, you see there. And then there'll be about a month for designs to be submitted. At that point, we'll have a jury. We're still sort of nailing down the jury, but a jury will look at all of the submissions, and we will pick winners of the design competition. And those winners will be recognized at an event on November 28th, and more details on that recognition event to come. Again, I want to thank you all for joining us. Thank you for your interest in age-friendly, age-appropriate housing options in Omaha. I'm going to turn it over to I think, Richard. Do I turn it back over to you, or are you going to turn it directly to Derek? But I'll let housing experts start to speak. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Todd. That was great. Yeah, we're going to back out of the slides so we can show people a better version of the slideshow. Somehow we got them seeing your presenter view. So when we get Derek up here, we'll give him the full screen treatment, which we unfortunately weren't able to provide for you, but that was useful. I think those dates are what people should be keeping in mind, and they'll all be posted. Hannah will share the landing page that we've got for people to look at, and all the information about the design competition is there with links to various other resources. But the current and whatever updated timing will be on there, as well as the submission requirements and so on. So Hannah, we are getting Todd's slides up. That looks
better.
That is better. Thank you.
Good.
Okay. Derek, now we got to you.
All right. Again, Derek Miller, City of Omaha Planning Department. You can go to the next slide here. And it might be surprising to a lot of people, but the city of Omaha has allowed ADUs by a different name since our last major zoning revision in 1987, through accessory apartments, also through second or two-family dwellings. And we've also allowed them through what's called a planned unit redevelopment tool, which was more recent, the last 10, 15 years or so, and then have always allowed them through a variance process, a use variance. But all these, including accessory apartments, have been difficult for people to navigate and get through. Starting with accessory apartments, you basically had to go around and ask your neighbors permission for the planning board and city council for you to develop a accessory apartment. And then also what's not on the screen, two-family dwellings, the zoning variance and PUR. So on the accessory apartments, let me back up. Since 1987, no one's utilized this because it was so difficult to navigate and get through. The other ways, the other means that we've had up until recently through those other methods that I spoke of, we've had a few people go through that process and actually develop ADUs, which is good news. But at the same time, we understand there are barriers to develop an ADU, and we want to make it more streamlined, especially since most ADUs are developed, built, and utilized by homeowners. They're not typically done by developers. Next slide. The planning department over the last 5 years has done a lot of research in different housing types, missing middle housing, which includes ADUs. We utilized our transit-oriented development process where we developed a new land use policy and code to bring a more modern ADU code to our zoning code, and we did that through TOD. Next slide. Knowing that, so we built this with a lot of research, a lot of input from the public during that process over the last 5 years. We heard from a lot of people. Although this ordinance only is applicable to the TOD area, which is basically Dodge Street from 10th to West Roads, about a quarter to half mile within Dodge Street. It was a way for us to start to open that door more for ADUs. And again, I'm not going to go through this word by word. You'll have access to our Chapter 55 code, which has all this information in there. Next slide. So again, this is more modern, a lot of research that we've done over the years. Some of this will be useful information as if you enter the process, the design competition. And so there's, this is applicable, I didn't say this, but this is applicable to internal, external, and detached ADUs. This design competition is on detached, which you can see in the diagram on the bottom left there. And again, I don't need to go over all these regulations. We can go more in depth through Q&A. Next slide. And one of the bigger regulations that's set in place right now is through a detached ADU. It could be up to 750 square feet or 50% of the primary dwelling unit. In this situation, we talked, people really don't have a frame of reference because we're looking just at the ADU and not the PDU. So what we're looking at is a maximum 750 square foot of conditioned space. Next slide. And again, some of the things we get into, and most of these regulations, you'll find that trying to get the potential ADUs to fit within existing neighborhoods, fit within existing context. And just had a question, PDU, that's primary dwelling unit. So that's the main house. But again, what these regulations are trying to do is make sure that these ADUs fit within the existing neighborhoods so they don't stand out. So it's just a part of the community or neighborhood fabric. Next slide. And then there's some other items of interest here. It gets into parking, design regulations. What we'd really like, again, to fit within the neighborhood community context is the ADU to look very similar to the primary dwelling unit. Again, in this situation, we're not utilizing one, we're not representing one primary dwelling unit. So this will have to be kind of an iterative process. Next slide. So last year we went through a whole process developing a housing affordability action plan as a requirement by the state. I'm glad that the requirement was in place because it was something we've needed to do for quite some time. Next slide. So this process, there's 5 goal areas. And so what this design competition does is actually applies to a couple different of these goals. And next slide. I'll go ahead. Is there a question? Okay. So one thing in particular is what it called for is continued revisions to our accessory dwelling unit zoning code, make it more applicable to more areas of Omaha, basically allowing more ADUs throughout our entire zoning jurisdiction. And right now it's recommended that we allow ADUs outright, permitted outright in R5 through R8 zoning districts, and then through a conditional use permit, which is basically an application that's submitted to the planning department. The planning board then approves that conditional use permit. So again, this will open it up further beyond the TOD area. And we may look at some other revisions. We've heard from a few groups about other changes they would like to see. So I think a lot of that's on the table. It'll take some more time to review. And also this design competition allows us to hear from the designers that participate, and they may see something in the code that would make it easier, remove some more barriers to allow ADUs within the community. So again, the timing of this couldn't be better. It helps us further implement the HAP, is what we call it, the Housing Affordability Action Plan. Next slide. And then next slide. Then again, there was within another goal area under housing innovation is the idea of pre-approved plans. We looked at a lot of other communities and this fits right in with it. So when we talk about fast track program, it could be interchangeable with pre-approved housing plans. So this is our first dive into pre-approved plans, and of this magnitude. We allow some pre-approved plans today in smaller aspects within things that people do within the community. But again, this design competition fits in with further implementing our housing action plan. And getting back to that fast track program, touching on that real quick. So as we go through this process, at the end of the day, depending on how many designs are awarded, what we'll do within the planning department is work with those designers to make those plans pre-approved. And it's gonna take some time, I imagine, to get through that. But our permanent inspections division is ready to go to work with any designers that have been selected. So really, that's that fast track program. And what that does with pre-approved plans and fast track, it just shortens that time up to move through the process of getting housing built within Omaha, because we have a huge need for more housing, and ADUs fits within that need to close that gap in housing. So in short, that's our fast track program. That's what it's going to look like. And we'll get more on those details here on the coming slides. I think this is my last slide here. Next slide.
Yes, it is.
So I'll turn it over to you, Richard.
Hey, thank you, Derek. That was terrific. That was a great introduction to folks. And I've got to do my little magic. And see if I can share a screen properly. And that ain't it. I'm going to try one more time. See if we can share. Okay. And we'll hit this button. Are we seeing a good show there, folks? Anna?
Yes, that's good.
Works well. Okay, terrific. Thank you so much. All right. So I'll talk a little bit about accessory dwellings, where they fit in for older adults, and what we mean by age-friendly design. I think Todd alluded to this at the beginning, is that one of the things that's driving this interest in age-friendly housing in general is, of course, the demographic that everyone is pretty much familiar with. this growth in the number of folks who are over 65, over 50, and that growth, it won't level off until well after the middle of the century. So for the next 40 years, we'll be adding more and more older adults as a percentage and as numbers to our total population. And the overwhelming reality is that most of us, me included, are growing old in homes that weren't designed for older adults, or really for a lot of life changes for that matter, but certainly for older adults. So there's this really profound person housing mismatch that exists now, that unless we change things, will get worse and worse as every decade goes by, with all the resulting problems, some of which I'll share with you today, and more of which we can talk about next week. But what we found is that while there's not that many age-friendly home designs available, there's even fewer age-friendly accessory dwelling designs available. There's lots of accessory dwelling designs you can find out there. Very few of them really are ones that could accommodate older adults growing into old age. And the intent of this competition is to, both highlight the possibilities there, but also actually create some age-friendly designs that can be used actually in Omaha now, and maybe other places as well, through Todd's fast track program. So as folks have alluded to, the winners of the competition will be eligible to then work with the city to take their plans through to contract documents, and will then be eligible to if that project, the process is successful, then be included in the fast track program for others to see and be on display. And we think it'll be beneficial for everybody. So reality now is, as I was alluding to, older adults live everywhere in every kind of home and every kind of housing, from old single-story wood frame, small homes, which I'm sure abound in the Omaha area, to ubiquitous ranch-style homes, even though it's on one story. Lots of us live in two-story homes, whether the single-family duplex, or as you see here, kind of more affordable triplex model, or the increasingly popular townhome category. The problem with all these houses is that they don't work very, very, very well for us. And so the whole problem is that we're living in homes that will not be safe places for us if they aren't already. We won't be able to live there safely and independently going forward. And that's a problem for us, for our families, for our households, for our neighbors, and really for the community at large. And we think accessory dwellings may have a role in helping to alleviate that. If we're really good planners, and some of us are, not many of us, we don't plan very well for our housing retirements, it turns out. And we look around to see whether there are alternatives nearby, alternatives in locations we want to go live in. You'll probably find that your options are pretty limited, unless you're unusual or you have an unusual selection in mind. So that's an issue. If we're looking around trying to plan, we're not going to find a house maybe that works very well for us. If we're planning and we're maybe thinking about remodeling our existing home, there are also challenges associated with that. Surprisingly high cost, sometimes uncertain kind of accessible outcomes and universal design outcomes that attend to that. So whether we're trying to remodel or whether we're looking around for other options, it's a challenging environment now. So we're hoping to, as a result of this competition, help to change that somewhat. So as I said, the demographics are really compelling now, with the numbers of older adults growing every year in every part of the country and not leveling off until well after the middle of the century. And household composition can be all over the map as well. It might be single adults, increasing numbers of single adults are living alone. It could very well be a couple. And one of the challenges with couples is that if you have an older couple living together, you have one older person helping another older person live in this inappropriate home, and one might get injured, and in fact both of them might get injured in the process. And now my mother and father had some close calls of their own. Or it could be multiple person households. We love the idea of house sharing, to combine households and share the economic benefits of that. All kinds of demographics are available and present in your community, I'm sure. These guys, I'm sure, don't have any issues in terms of their planning and so on, because they can kind of snap their fingers. For one of them, actually, it's no longer an issue. He's cycled out. Our per drummer, Charlie Watts, has passed away a year ago, but everyone is aging, and even these guys need to think about their homes and the aging accommodations that it has for them, if they're going to age successfully. And that's what we're after, really, is aging successfully. So here's some of the issues that you may full recognize. You may be experiencing it yourself. You may know friends or loved ones who have some of these same issues. It's, again, certainly what we're trying to overcome here. And that is, most homes have stairs coming in or out of them. And even a couple stairs like this can be a huge impediment. You don't have to have a 8 or 10 step flight of stairs to be a problem. 1 or 2 stairs alone can be an issue. And being unsteady on stairs and maybe not having the same strength or stamina or balance that you had before. If it comes to the point where you're using a piece of equipment like a walker, it's a real double problem, because you've got to, leave the walker behind, get the walker moved up onto the first floor of the house, and you may have the same issue inside the house. So stairs are certainly a #1 issue for safety for a lot of us as we grow older. Going inside the house, the next most truly problematic area seems to be bathrooms. And a lot of us may have this classic 3-fixture bathroom, this kind of 5 foot wide by 8 foot long bathroom that's so prevalent all over the country. One of my bathrooms in my house is a similar design. And if it comes to the point where you're using a wheelchair, you can see how completely inadequate it is. You can't maneuver, you can't turn around, and reaching anything is a problem. But you don't really need to use a wheelchair for these kinds of bathrooms to be issues. Long before that would happen, even if you're still ambulatory, having to wedge yourself between the toilet and the tub and get off balance by reaching the mix valve to adjust the water temperature is really a problem. So for people in various circumstances, our existing bathroom designs are generally not just too small, but the orientation of the fixtures isn't helpful for us. Other problem areas abound. Where we have things stored, at one time may not have been an issue at all, but the high storage or very low storage that's so prevalent in so many of our homes can present a real challenge. And being able to reach up safely, to reach up without having to get onto a stool. And so storage options is an important thing to think about for age-friendly design. Reaching up high is also a problem in the kitchen, just with respect to microwaves. So many of them are installed over the stove or range, where you have to lift hot things out and put heavy things in, can be a real problem for a lot of us as we grow older. And finding other locations for things like microwaves is a real important element of a successful and usable kitchen. Elsewhere in kitchens, any storage of any kind, we see people doing all kinds of kind of absurd things to get up and reach the stored items that are way too high in cabinets, stepping on stools and risking falls, and sometimes even having them. Again, I know a number of folks who've done this in their homes, and you may know the same thing. So thinking about storage in the house overall, in the kitchen in particular, is an issue. It's not just high stuff, though, as I indicated, concentrating storage very low to the ground also is a problem, because I know I don't want to kneel and bend over all the time to reach things in low cabinets. So thinking about where that storage is and how it's arranged can make a big difference in people's lives. So if all of our communities had well-designed homes in all these various categories, it would be terrific. And all housing is niche housing. So some of us may prefer one or another of these options and have them available to you. So if your target age restricted housing is your cup of tea, then having those nearby or in locations that you want them to is important. This particular area of the housing market is the area we've seen the most responsiveness, finally and eventually, to their older adult population. So you may find more options here than in others, but multifamily is also an option too for folks that they're selecting more recently constructed projects, and either rental or owned. It may be condo, it may be co-op or rental. Again, it may be that may be what you're looking for and may work well for you. And again, you can find some good age-friendly features in more recently built and developed examples of those. As I said before, a lot of people still prefer single-family homes. If you can renovate them successfully, terrific. We know that there are renovation options with accessory dwellings as well, or maybe that the more affordable duplex or triplex options might be good. And maybe the city of Omaha is taking a look at where those are allowed within the various zone districts as well. We know that manufactured housing has come a long way over the past 30 or 40 years. And so there's some terrific examples of modular and panelized designs that come with some age-friendly elements to them. And there may be other kind of options. Again, I don't know what Omaha is doing in terms of allowing cluster pocket neighborhood kind of designs that may allow these very small dwellings, but in an area that's allows for some social cohesion and some social relationships to form. And everyone's probably heard of missing middle. It's a very frequently heard term these days. A lot of the options we're talking about in terms of affordability kind of occupy a missing middle strata. And certainly accessory dwellings are also very explicitly part of the missing middle options that people have. They're affordable. They're more affordable than a lot of homes and housing, and can sometimes be deeply affordable if the financing can be arranged in creative ways. So accessory dwellings, they've been around forever, it seems like hundreds of years in this country and really all over the world, known by a whole variety of names: accessory apartments, coach houses, granny flats, casitas, secondary dwelling units, all kinds of names, all meaning about the same thing. It's a complete secondary dwelling on a lot with a primary residence where it already exists. And they can take a lot of forms, some of which work better for an older occupant than others. And I'll go through some of these typologies for you now. So we have detached, upper levels and interiors in the lower level, above garages or garage conversions. Well, so a detached ADU can really work quite well. That's the subject of this competition. And we look forward to seeing some really terrific age-friendly designs come out. But attached is also a viable option, as provided you keep these age-friendly features in mind, especially with respect to entering and exiting the house. If you're thinking about something for an interior upper level, it may be okay for purposes other than the residence of an older adult. It may be okay for a caregiver or another family member, or maybe okay to generate rental income to preserve the residence going forward, but not really for an older adult themselves to live in. We love the notion of renovated basement spaces for accessory dwellings, and they work okay for older adults as long as you have this walkout rollout feature in the back that takes you someplace that you can get off the property, whether it connects to a driveway or eventually to a sidewalk. So with some considerations, that can be viable. Also, very popular to have accessory dwellings over a garage. Again, not so good for the older adult, but for the other purposes I talked about. And certainly a garage conversion can work well. We just saw a picture of that going forward. So those are the options for accessory dwellings. Most of them can work for residence by an older adult. Some of them can work for other purposes, but not for older adults. So we talk about a universal design in this competition particularly. So it's around 350 to 750 square feet currently is what you'll be looking at within the city limits of Omaha as a usual practice. But what you really have to have is, of course, a step-free entrance. That's essential. There's not that many doors in accessory dwellings, but where you've got them, they got to be wide enough to get people through, their equipment through in some cases, and some cases caregivers providing assistance coming or going. So 32 or 36-inch wide doors. Obviously a usable bathroom. Clearly a more usable kitchen would be in order, and we'll show you some examples of that. A laundry can be optional, but if you have one, there are a lot of different options with laundries we can talk about later. One thing we'd like to see, and we think is really important in accessory dwellings, is because they're so small, is being thoughtful about providing outdoor living space. These are small dwellings, and having a space that someone can get out to outside that's easy to get to, that's comfortable during climate weather is a real advantage. So we'd like you to keep that in mind. This is an example of a nice little accessory dwelling. It was built in someone's backyard. You could see it the same style as the primary residence, which is there in the background. It looks good. They even have an inclined step-free pathway coming in, it looks like. There are two problems with this that I think you should avoid if you're thinking about designing something like this going forward. And here it is. You may have already figured this out, but it looks as if this pathway is inclined all the way up to the doorway. And if you do commercial work, you know that you need to have a level landing or platform on either side of the door. And it's the same thing is true. It's one of the areas where you can borrow from the accessibility standards we don't really like to do in residential situations, but in this case, it works well. So having a level landing at the doorway means that the older adult who may have balance issues isn't wrestling with their walker at the same time they're trying to open the doors, at the same time they're trying to stay upright. So having that inclined graded surface go to a level landing area outside that doorway is important. We also really like to have roof overhangs that we describe in our design criteria so that a couple of things can happen. The first is so it protects occupants who may be taking longer entering or exiting their house from weather. And maybe this time of year, we think about the heat from outside in the sunshine, but obviously rain, snow, ice and sleet is the thing you want to protect them from. It also protects that entrance from water infiltration more than it would without it. And so it's a critical thing to maintain the integrity of that doorway and the sills and the foundation and the plates at that area. Keeping water away from the door matters a lot. So there's good reasons to have a roof overhang at a level entry doorway. Covered porch for sure. So this is this converted garage, which you saw earlier. So it's easy to do. You'll see another picture of it, I think, in a couple of minutes. I'll have a slide there for that. And it's already clearly pretty level. So you'll have an easier time of getting people in and out. That certainly is an option. You can always add a loft or something overhead as well. And we will move over here. There we go. So this is not an accessory dwelling, but I have this up here to show a number of design features, which I think it's important to keep in mind, kind of illustrate some of the things. This happens to be a small single-story home in an infill project, happens to be in Raleigh, North Carolina. So one of the things it has is it has a continuous pathway from driveway all the way up to the front porch. It sneaks behind those Nandina bushes there and brings you to the front porch level, just as those stairs do. It's fine to have stairs. We don't hate stairs. We just like to have a gentle sloping walkway that's also available. So the stairs are there. The porch is level with the first floor of the house, crucial. You've got the porch roof overhang, which, as I said before, is really essential. What it doesn't have is handrails on the stairs. If you're going to have stairs, it's important to have handrails so that people can use them safely and securely. And the pathway is firm, stable, and even all the way from where the car is up to the front porch. So those are things to keep in mind as you think about the accessory dwelling you might be designing or wanting. What we're not that keen on, and I have this vivid green, I'm not quite sure why I picked that color for this, to remind us that this is an accessibility feature, not really a universal design feature. We know that in a lot of retrofit circumstances, unfortunately, you can't avoid ramps. Ramps are everywhere, and way too many of them look like this, like they stick out like a sore thumb, unpainted, unloved, uncared for, in some cases unsafe as well. The slope of this ramp doesn't seem to be too steep, but I wonder how safe it is for folks to use and if it's been maintained properly. So we'd like to not show ramps in this competition. We'll talk a little bit more about this in the deep dive we'll take next week. And here's an example of an addition that is an accessory dwelling that was created in Durham, North Carolina. It does not have a step-free entrance at this location. They likened it to being ramp ready, and I'm not really fond of ramp ready solutions anywhere. But as it so happens, because it was an addition, there was a ramp at the other end of the building built earlier and for other purposes that is actually quite accessible and quite usable. So in this case, they were able to gain a step-free entrance that was already built in without having to build it in to the particular addition that they put onto it. So that's a good thing. This is another example of a garage conversion. They don't have the roof overhang the doorway, but they do have this very pleasant outside screened-in area for people to use during weather where it's possible. So we like to see examples like that. People ask me what the most difficult thing about explaining universal design is, and I always have the same answer. It's getting the right images. So in this case, we have a series of images that have exteriors that match the interiors, but the exteriors don't match what we like to have in the competition. So you've got a staircase without a step-free entrance showing here. So for that, I apologize, and that's just a warning. But they do have the outdoor living area. They have a handrail on one side, which is, we like to have it on both sides. They do look as if they have a roof overhang the doorway, so that's good. And the deck is at the same level as the interior level. So if they added, as they could have here easily, of course, a step-free entrance that was graded, it would have been much more pleasant and much more long-lasting in terms of people's ability to use it. So you go inside this. This is relatively small, 350 square feet. It really is something of a studio apartment. You can see the deck out there. In the living room and bedroom that's open, you could have a whole variety of things. You could have Murphy beds and a whole variety of interesting technology with sliding walls and things that fold down that might work better. And they also have quite clearly a larger and therefore more usable bathroom. So they've got a curbless shower. They've added some grab bars, which we're not calling for. We don't think that at first occupancy, you need to have grab bars located, because people need to have grab bars where they need them, not where your McDonald's restroom has them, which is what these things are. So we insist on blocking behind the walls, but not grab bars installed at first occupancy. And it also has an outswinging door, which is useful in a lot of circumstances, not just accessory dwellings, but a lot of renovation situations, for example, where space is tight, you need to have that outswinging door. So this works well from that perspective. So next is just checking my time. Next is a slightly larger version. They did put a ramp in there. Again, they could have graded it, but they didn't. And this is a 525 square foot. So they've created a 1-bedroom unit. They've got a washer dryer, in this case, a side-by-side. I think we'll talk more about that later. That's a noteworthy thing here, slightly larger, again, still with outdoor living space. There's another version here where we experimented with pocket doors, and pocket doors in a lot of circumstances, because they save space and because you can get them now with better hardware, can work really well in small interior spaces. So you see pocket doors. So this is one version of a kitchen. So we just showed how you might eliminate all the wall cabinets altogether and emphasize base cabinets. So in this case, you've got an under counter mounted dishwasher that's small because it's only 1 or 2 people living there. You've got base cabinets emphasizing drawers, not doors, so easy access to those. You've got one lowered work surface. You could have eliminated that and just used the table, which is adjacent as a lowered work surface. And there's a as I say, no wall cabinet. There's an alcove there that you could have used for alternate storage going up. You might have used it for a microwave. You could have put something like this in that location. That's the pantry style storage is really our preferred storage for a lot of reasons. You get that full height usability and adjustability over time, so things can be located where you need them. We really like ovens, ranges, and so on with front controls. It makes a big difference not having to reach over hot stovetops or hot cooking items to adjust things. We like it even better if those controls are angled, so you can see them more easily. And our last example is the largest yet, a little bit over the at least nominal minimums for Omaha. Again, they have their ramp on the side. They do have the outdoor living area. They do have the roof overhang. 800 square feet. They've squeezed 2 tiny little bedrooms in there. In this case, they decided to opt for a tub. You could do that. Some people really prefer tub bathing as opposed to showering. And they would have to make that change to a curbless shower at some point later. This shows one location, for your microwave, not over the range, but on a countertop or built into an array of wall ovens would do well. If you're thinking about if there's enough space to put a washer dryer in there, there isn't always. And there may not even be space for a side-by-side. You may have to have an over-under in some cases, but we'll talk more about this next week. But front controls and front loading and unloading are absolutely essential for these because of the flexibility that they have here. This is my mom. She was 5 feet tall. You can see that even on floor-mounted models for her, this was too short. She would have really benefited from having them about 6 inches higher, in my opinion. a whole variety of curbless showers that are available now. This happens to be like probably a 3-piece, 4-piece fiberglass unit that you can get. You can also go a lot more expensive. You can get, you can go tiled. In that case, in either case, they're very serviceable curbless showers that are available now that you can design or buy off the shelf. So what we think about these kinds of homes, universal accessory dwellings, is they're high function. You've seen some of those features now. They emphasize livability, the ability to age in place successfully. We think that from a household's perspective, they can be a real financial boon because they can delay moves to expensive care settings. I have to tell you about the $50,000 a year, $100,000 a year or more you can pay in some of these places. The savings add up if you're living in the same place. We think that it offers fewer injuries for both individuals and their caregivers, and not just improved physical health, but also improved mental health, because people will be able to maintain their activities of meaning and purpose for a lot longer. And really, what it's talking about is offering more choice and interdependence. The things I'd like to do for others, the things I might require people to do for me. I can extend for years longer my the choices I have and the interdependence that I maintain with my family and friends. So it really is, we're focusing on older adults today, but really is housing for all ages. So I want to quickly go through a couple of things before I turn it over to Hannah, because I think I'm running out of my time here if I've got my timing correct. And that is, here's our scoring criteria. We're putting aging in place clearly at the top of the list. That age-friendly criteria is really the most important thing. So we're assigning 50% scoring to that, 25% to constructability and affordability. Again, more details on that in your attached materials in next week. And 25% to how well we think it fits a particular context. So that's how we're going to evaluate things when we evaluate the competition entries come late, like mid fall. So in terms of the metrics, we've got a bunch of resources for you. There's a competition guide that's available. Hannah will talk about the landing page. The design criteria itself is again downloadable, and it'll have all the details in terms of the slopes and graded entries and the other important features. There's another attending document that's called design guidance, which in some cases explains or hits on other topics that aren't strictly part of the design criteria itself. And there's a variety of other resources that I'll just quickly race through now before I turn over to Hannah. We have a bunch on our website. AARP has many reference documents, both from a development perspective as well as for design guidance perspective. And so all these things are available through the landing page that Hannah will tell you about, and that you should visit often. So video libraries, home fit guides for consumers, and so on. So all that's possible. Let me see. These are our resources on our housing page of our website. And again, you can click there from the landing page, and we'll talk about, okay, this is us in Asheville, North Carolina, and that's how you get in touch with us. Thank you for your attention to this. I will unshare and then get Hannah to come back in to share hers, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, let me see if I can do that again.
Yeah, right.
The learning curve. All right. That didn't work. Yes, I have to share before.
While you're doing that, Hannah, I'll just step on your time. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do one more click, I think. I see your presentation view.
Darn it.
Yeah. So while you're figuring it out, I'll just say that, Hannah will guide you through the landing page, and to an extent, the competition guide, but you'll also talk about, how we're thinking about winners, how many of them, And, and clearing the bar to get to the kind of point where you're eligible. That's a great beach scene. There you go. That's perfect.
I think that's Topsail.
Okay.
In North Carolina, we have
Yeah,
lovely,
far from Omaha.
yeah. All right, so I'm excited there's so many people interested in this. I'm gonna try to walk through just specifically the competition information. So this is us. You've gotten a lot of information so far on the whys. Specifically, I mean, I think I just want to reiterate that we're looking, the real goal is to have some ADU plans that are good for older adults and are also affordable to build and don't take too much more money to get to that point of building. So, so that, you know, it can fit in with that affordable housing, which is, we have a limited amount of here as well. So this is one of the big questions. What's in it for you or those of you who are going to submit designs? The first is that, as Derek mentioned, this fast track program is a new program. Eventually, they're hoping to have a gallery of plans, as many cities do. This competition is very similar to the competitions that have been run in Seattle and Portland and LA and Raleigh that you may be familiar with, may not be. But with those competitions, they end up having a web page where people, the public, can go and see a gallery of plans, choose a plan that they like, click on that plan, get details about the designer, maybe link to that designer's website, and buy the plans from the designer and go from there. So that's kind of the idea and goal. And this is I'm sure there'll be more rounds of this kind of thing, getting these pre-approved plans for that gallery. It's exciting that this first round is for age-friendly or more usable for more than simply 100% mobile people. So also we'll have a gallery on our website, on the Better Living Design website, that'll showcase not only Omaha, but other plans that come out of competitions around the country. Right now, there really aren't that many truly age-friendly ADU plans, so we're excited to grow that. Of course, having your work displayed on the city website could generate more business, whether it's ADUs or anything else. So we're hoping that that'll be an incentive. Finally, we are going to have a cash prize, $5,000 total. We're going to pick three of the top. We're going to pick the top three, and then a number of honorable mentions. So first prize, 3,000, second, 1,500, third prize, 500, and then all of the honorable mentions will then be eligible to move on to the city review to be included in that fast track program. Yeah, so who can apply? Anyone who's eligible to submit for a single family home in the city of Omaha can submit for this program. The cost of the plans will be set by the designer. There's no cap. The city is not imposing a cap on how much those the designer can charge, not at all. You can submit ADUs that have already been built. That'd be great. What are we looking for in the submissions? So we've asked for a number of different drawings, and what we're really, and for a narrative, and what we're really looking for is clear communication of how your design is truly going to work for an older adult. So, you know, use the drawings, use renderings, use notes, all of that stuff. That's what we want to see. The timeline. Yep, today we're having an information session. Next week, we're going to have an even deeper dive into age-friendly design and go over the criteria and the guidance documents. The submittal portal will open on the 15th, and that, if you are on this call, we have your email, and that will be emailed to you. It will also appear on the landing page, but you should get it automatically. And then submissions are due by October 13th. Yep, the jury will deliberate. We're hoping to give them as much time as possible, and then the winners will be notified, and we'll have a fun event. Sounds like it's going to be really fun on November 28th that AARP is hosting to honor those who win. So general requirements, Derek went over minimum, or the maximum, I'm sorry. The maximum 750 square feet. Single level stairs are hard for many. We like decks, porches, and patios. That's nice outdoor space. Of course, you don't have a specific site, so it's, you know, you can only do so much, but work with what you have. Yeah, requested drawings. We're requesting floor plans, dimension floor plans, and elevations. And the interior elevations of the kitchen and bathroom specifically, because those seem to be the most challenging areas to make truly age-friendly. And then anything else you want to give us, we're happy to receive to, you know, not hour-long videos, but, you know, short animations are great. And then a narrative will help you, fill in any areas that aren't addressed on those, and tell us more about your design. So I'll just quickly stop sharing this. If you have questions, I'm the person you can contact. My contact information is there. About the competition, stop sharing. Let's try to share the other screen and quickly go over. Share screen. Okay.
So this is the landing page, Hannah?
That seems like it looks good. So this is the landing page. I think many of you have probably been here. This gives you a lot more detail about the competition. A lot of the stuff I've already gone over, the whys and wherefores and the timeline. These are the specific submittal requirements. These are also in the competition guide, which you can get to by clicking there. And then the scoring criteria, Richard went over with you. This is the competition guide. Has specifically the submission document requirements. So exactly what we're asking for you to submit and the size is located here. Again, if you have any questions about any of it, if something, we're learning as we go. So if you have any feedback, it's welcome. I think each time this kind of competition is run, every team learns more. So yeah, eventually we'll get to really good around the review. We have an interesting panel of jurors that Todd can tell us more about. And if you have questions, I think Derek mentioned, you know, if you run into things that you just think, well, why can't I do that, or whatever, the city is willing to work with folks, because this is an evolving kind of process. And so there are the scoring guidelines again, and I'll add to these FAQs as we go along. So that's that. This page, which you get to by clicking on this little button right here, has a ton of resources. Some of these links link to pages that have a bunch of resources. Some are single videos or single documents, but there's a lot to explore there. This is the design criteria that we'll go over in more detail next week. Very specific guidance and background on that. So I'll stop sharing there, and I think it's 2:04, so I think we can stop and take questions. Yeah.
So I've been monitoring the chat, and I've got a couple of questions. Hannah, one of them is specifically for you. It says, is there a format for submissions, digital or printed, mounted on boards, or rolled?
Yes, so they're digital, and the specific information is located in that competition guide. We have, so PDF, flattened, max file size 500. If you can package those, that's preferred. Our minimum sheet size is 11 by 17, but you can give us 24 by 36 if you like. Yeah, those details are located in that competition guide. And if you look at those, if you read that and you still have questions, please email me or call.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. I have another question. I know the answer, but I will let you. Will this recording be posted?
Yes, this recording will be posted probably tomorrow.
On the landing page.
On the landing page. And it will be also emailed out to the people who have registered for the webinar today.
Okay, thank you. I have a question. Derek, I think you're probably the best one to answer this. The question is whether or not the ADUs can be tied into the existing PDUs utilities.
Yeah, yes, they can if specifically on the sewer side, if that doesn't go above and beyond the total fixture limit. So it has to deal with the plumbing code, but general purposes, yes, it can be tied in.
Okay, thank you for that. And then this could be anyone on the panel who can speak to it. Is there any financial assistance available to pursue ADUs that are age friendly?
Let me take a stab at that, Karna, so this competition doesn't include any special financing or outside funding in the case of something that might be built. We're really focusing on the design and constructability of it. I think that's an important question that the city and advocates within the city for older adults housing and for affordable housing should probably have a conversation about. So I think it's relatable. We know that ADUs are more affordable. We also know that ADUs may in themselves be beyond the reach for folks who don't have the same access to equity financing, financing of any kinds as some other households. So it's an important question to be talking about.
Thank you. We have another question. It says, are there any points for sustainability, like LEED?
No.
It's encouraged to follow if you want to, use LEED or passive house or any of those to guide your design. Go for it. We do encourage that, but no specific points for LEED.
Okay. Does the site need to be identified as part of the submission? How does this relate to the context scoring criteria? Richard?
Yeah, the site does not need to be identified, but you could if you chose to. And the context scoring criteria is tricky. I know that it relates in part to some of the language that the city has, and maybe Derek, I'll kick part of that back to you because there is some language. I'm thinking if it's now or pending that relates to exterior materials. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I mean, the zoning ordinance today for ADUs would like the ADU to match the existing primary dwelling units overall features and look. But I think again, it's open and we have pretty diverse neighborhoods. So if hopefully we have quite a few submissions and we can get quite a few of these pre-approved. So then when anyone within any particular neighborhood then can select for the one that fits in with the neighborhood. I don't know if they answered the question or not.
Yeah. That's good for now. We can talk more about this next week.
Okay. Derek, I have another question specific to the city of Omaha. The question is, will integrated storm shelters be required by the city of Omaha for this competition?
It's a good question. I don't think so. That's something I would have to follow up with, but at this point in time, I don't think so. Given the pure size of these units, it's probably not possible.
Okay. Another question says, can the designs be 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, or studios? Is one preferred?
I would say no. It'd be lovely to get some diversity, but we're not arbitrarily selecting which is preferred.
Okay, so you're saying so they can design 1, 2, or 3 if they choose to. When you say no, 1 is not a preferred design.
Studio 1 or 2 within the obvious constraints of the space. Once you get up to 2 bedrooms, those are awfully small spaces, but there may be a way to render that and it's workable.
Okay. I'll give this to Hannah. Are universities allowed to participate?
That's an interesting question. So I wouldn't say no. I think if you're wanting to submit for, I mean, eligibility is if you can submit for single family to the city of Omaha, then you're eligible. You may, students may need to get a host, you know, an office to host them, or work it some other way.
Just to be clear, so this is not specifically a student design competition. We do that also, and it tends to be a separate kind of path of travel. I would think personally, I think it'd be wonderful if some students got together, particularly under the supervision, you know, of an instructor, or in the manner that Hannah proposed, and submitted a plan. I mean, could get some interesting results. I mean, the idea on the other end, of course, is that if they're lucky enough to win first or second or third prize or honorable mention, they're eligible to submit the plan to the city at a further point in design and negotiate with them about the pre-approval process. That option may be not possible with some student submissions.
I do want to add some information about this is a follow-up to the university question. It said this viewer said, we are building a sustainable small house. Are buildings under construction acceptable? And
Yes.
that this is a faculty student team.
Hmm.
So
I think yes.
Yes, they're eligible, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's all good. Here's another good question. Is the patio included in the 750 square feet?
No, it's not.
Okay, so that's in addition.
That would be small indeed, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but
750 is the conditioned square feet.
Yes, conditioned.
okay. Okay, so here's a question. I think this is probably Derek or Richard. The submitted drawings are for competition and not construction. Any pre-approved plans available for purchase would be prepared as construction documents, correct? Correct, question mark.
Yeah, we're not asking for construction documents as a part of the competition. Those winners, you know, will be eligible to move their project through to construction documents with the city. So it's at that point that final design and all those steps would be taken.
Okay. At this time, I don't see any other questions in the chat or the Q&A box. If you have something, please turn it in. Hannah, is there anything in the frequently asked questions that you've seen on the landing page, or do we just want to go back to Todd?
Yeah, the
I guess
last was answered, just answered.
so.
me-
They're there.
Let me add a detail that I didn't speak to, and that's oftentimes when you talk about accessory dwellings, people conflate them with tiny homes. And tiny homes is another nationally known term now, not nationally understood very well. But and the answer is that the accessory dwellings in general, and accessory dwellings in this competition are not the same thing as tiny homes. Tiny homes are much smaller than these, and they have different characteristics. In some cases, they need to be portable and so on. So this is really about something that's going to go onto a foundation. And I've looked at a number of tiny home designs. I've never seen one yet that worked well from an older adult's perspective. They're just very, very small. And if for no other element, it's the bathrooms alone just would be totally unworkable. So just put that to rest, even though that question wasn't submitted. And I guess, Todd, do you want to say something about who some of the jurors are that we know so far?
Well, I'll just say it's still a work in progress. We have several people who have agreed, and we're continuing to add some jurors. And if you're in Omaha and the housing world, the names will be familiar to you. So I want to get the whole jury assembled, and then we'll have an announcement of that. But we have some really great experts, and a lot of them are coming from our partner organizations to be a part of this. And so we're grateful for their commitment to share their expertise with us and judge this competition.
I just saw another question pop up. Should the designer's name and information be on the submissions, or will they be judged anonymously?
That's a question I'm going to kick to next week. I think we need to have a conversation about that. Hannah and I have had conversations. I'm not sure we have as a team. I want to get that vetted through the team beforehand. That's a good question.
Another question might be, how much time do designers have after this round, this phase, to get their drawings to the city for that review? I think Derek would.
Yeah, I think that's to be determined. So I think that's something that would be a work in progress.
It's not safe to say it's not going to be December 1st. We're not.
Yeah, we want to make sure we work with the designers that are selected, that we do this right. So I don't think we'll limit any time.
I have another question in the question and answer section. The website says we encourage submissions from younger and emerging architects, women and minority-owned businesses, and firms who can conduct business in languages other than English. Does that factor into the scoring criteria?
Well, my answer to that is not formally no. I think in some cases it might be a tiebreaker, but absolutely not into the basic scoring criteria in terms of adhering to our 3 different basic categories. And that's a great question for us to come back with a more authoritative answer to later, though.
Well, Richard, I'm going to ask a follow-up question then. Is there somewhere on the application that designates so you can check a box if you meet that criteria?
Yeah, do we have that yet, Hannah?
There should be.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else out there with a question that is so burning you want it answered right away? We've got a window here.
So we're going to get back with answers to a couple of questions we couldn't fully answer now, including a TBD announcement on who the jurors are. I don't know whether we'll have all those done by next week. We have the submittal in window opening in about a month, for about a month, and then the announcement at the end of November. So those are the hopscotches we've got. So we got an event next week that'll talk about age-friendly design in more detail, and then a submittal opening period in the middle of September, closing in the middle of October, and an announcement at the end of the month of November.
Richard, I had one more question that came in. Are there extra points for going above and beyond the criteria for age-friendly design?
I would think sure. I mean, we have, I'm uncomfortable using the word minimums because it has such wretched connotations in the world of accessible design, but what we have is for the design competition was intentionally reducing the complexity of items that we were calling for. And you could tell from looking at all the other resources in age-friendly design, you could do a lot more than just what we're offering. So for sure, if you find a way to meet the basic criteria and then go beyond, then that's really terrific. And remember, the winners will be showcased. The honorable mentions will be showcased so that any good ideas you have, others can see, and you'll have the benefit of kind of seeding other minds going forward if you have some good stuff that goes beyond the minimums.
The same person is asking if the scoring is based on the Better Living Design checklist.
Based on, yes, I would say roughly based on.
Applications go to UDI.
Applications go to us, yeah. You know, we're managing the application process, and when the submission portal opens, that'll direct all the documentation to us. And Hannah and I will manage that process and answer questions from submitters. And then we'll organize it for the jurors to look at, and there'll be jury sessions that we have to be decided to show the jurors what people have come up with. Is that all, do you think, Karna?
Let me just double check here. I think. Did you see Derek is experiencing a fire drill?
Oh, no. Okay. Hope that's
Yeah,
all.
that's why Derek disappeared. I believe that's all the questions we see right now. If something pops up, we will put it on the frequently asked question page, but I believe we've addressed everything that was immediate.
Those are good. And if you're capturing those questions, Karna, somehow, then we'll be able to access those. I'm not sure how we do that, but anyway, so I guess what I'll say is thank everybody for their attention here. Thank you for attending. We hope this was useful to you. We look forward to seeing your submissions. You've been told the time frame over and over again, so I won't repeat it now. Know that if you're attending, we've captured your information. We'll get back to you. And there's a bunch of folks who registered but didn't attend, and others still who we have their emails for. So that whole group, if you've got your information, we'll make sure we keep you updated on the progress between now and the submittal deadline, middle of October, and then beyond. So we'll be able to communicate with you in that manner. So thank you all very much. And as Hannah said, questions should be directed to her. So after this session, offline, please feel free to contact her, and everything can go in and out via the landing page. And I suppose the one thing we might do, Hannah, is, do you think you might put the landing page URL in the chat? Is that conceivable? Is that the shortest distance between 2 points? Then people could just click on it and then sail away. I'm guessing that's going to be possible, so we'll just wait for you to do that before there it is. Okay. So we'll stay on for a moment so you can click on that and get that onto your browser, and you can save that. And we'll see maybe a lot of you next week, we hope. And until then, have a great rest of your week and a great weekend. And next week, stay cool. And there's Hannah's email as well. I feel like I want to hang around here for a minute to see this. Make sure people can do that. Okay. All right, there we go. All right. Thank you all very much. So long.
Thanks for fielding the questions, Karna.